So greetings to those in the audience, and thank you for joining us for this panel discussion on digital inclusion and equity. This session is primarily focused on the inclusion of persons with disabilities as both consumers and creators of technology. On behalf of my fellow panelists, I would like to thank the hosts of this event and the organizing parties for the invitation to participate. My name is Shane Kennedy, and I will serve as the moderator for this session. I am representing the Global Initiative for Inclusive ICTs, or G3ICT, as a senior fellow. G3ICT is an international NGO that was founded to support achievement of goals set forth in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, or the UNCRPD, specifically Article 9 on accessibility. In terms of my background, I am an NGO executive, researcher, author, and policy advisor, with a primary focus on the economic and social inclusion of persons with disabilities. I am joined today by 4 outstanding panelists. Each will provide a unique perspective on the topic and set forth challenges for the ICT sector to consider. Dr. Lamondre Pugh is the CEO of Billion Strong. Lamondre is a dynamic leader, speaker, and mentor who is sought out for his experience on intersectionality and inclusion. He has received recognition for his contributions to furthering disability and racial justice. Mansoor Ahmad Chowdhury is a founder and trustee of Impact Foundation Bangladesh and is a noted human rights activist. He has worked with the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights, World Bank, and a host of other multilateral organizations and foundations. He has also been recognized for his leadership in establishing laws and programs in Bangladesh to support the full inclusion of persons with disabilities. Bhaskar Bhattacharjee serves as the National Consultant for Accessibility in the Access to Information Program, ICT division of the Bangladesh government. In this role, he supports an enabling environment for innovation and the development of programming to support the inclusion of persons with disabilities. He serves as a country representative for G3ICT and has participated as a member of numerous international committees for which he has received multiple prestigious awards. And Leah Rappaport is a quality assurance analyst with Aspiritech, a technology services nonprofit in the United States. She applies her strong observational and analytical skills and professional and lived experience to ensure software is both accessible and usable for all stakeholders. Thank you for your participation in this important discussion. I am honored to join you for this event. This session will feature opening remarks from each of our panelists, a series of moderated questions, and closing comments where each panelist will offer an actionable challenge to the audience. The objectives of this session are to provide direct insight on the lived experience of persons with disabilities and the benefits and barriers of ICT, establish expectations for necessary progress in the accessibility and usability of ICT, and provide a compelling argument for action and offer a series of challenges that should be taken up by the sector. Our intent is to provide new and relevant insights that help to advance this critical topic, and we are, of course, available to support further actions that may result. I would now like to invite each of our panelists to offer a few minutes of opening comments. Lamondre, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. And it is an honor to be a part of this panel and to share in this discussion. Before I go any further, my name is Lamondre Pugh. I am a Black man with a bald head and a full beard. I am in my home office in Columbia, South Carolina in the United States, and I'm sitting in front of a wall that has a purple glow behind it, and I'm seated in my wheelchair. We live in a very connected world. In fact, when I talk about being connected, I'm talking about how our systems, how our economy, how our society, and how our environment are all interconnected. And the thoroughfare through which all of that flows, and so much of it flows, is technology. It has become ubiquitous in many instances. And it's really amazing because it helps to move our world forward. It helps to progress us to other levels. And actually, it is the principles of sustainability. Now, when we talk about the world and a connected world, let's talk about population just a little bit. So we know that there are almost 8 billion people on the planet, and 1.3 of those people identify or are identified as persons with disabilities. So 1.3 billion, that is a huge number. That is a mass that cannot be ignored. But even with that 1.3 billion, what we recognize is that statistic is probably quite conservative. And that's because many people refuse to identify or even be associated with persons with disabilities. And there's a reason for that. That is because of the stigmas that's associated with disabilities. In many cultures, disability is viewed as a negative. It is viewed as in some cultures, a curse. In other words, if you're a person with a disability, many times you're looked at as less than. As a result, there are a number of barriers that are presented. So why would a person want to identify? But I will tell you, things have changed and things are changing. We see an uprise in a shift of perspective of people with disabilities and how people with disabilities identify. And when I say that, what I mean by this is that identification is not only about how the world sees you, but it's also about how you see yourself. And there has definitely been a change. So why is this important to the conversation that we're having today about digital inclusion? Well, that's because when the identity of who you are begins to change and you become more empowered, you become more involved. And with that, you're looking for ways to really interact with the world around you. Technology has always been that gateway for people with disabilities. And honestly, when all of us start to step up, when people with disabilities are truly integrated into our societies, particularly through accessibility in technology, the entire world benefits. There's no progress if any one of us is left behind. And we have to remember that as we choose to design, as we choose to move forward, as we choose to create, that we need to create with all of us in mind, not as a tack on at the end or a retrofit, but starting with accessibility and true inclusion from the beginning. This is the challenge I believe that we face now. This is the challenge that we're looking at, and this is the challenge that we have to answer. So I'm honored today that you have chosen to take on that challenge, and I'm honored that this is a part of the conversation because ultimately, when we talk about design, when we talk about technology, when we talk about information and communications, this really is about how we connect in the world. And people with disabilities, 1.3 billion identified, have to be an integral part of that conversation, not to be talked about, but to be included in the conversation. There's an old adage in the disability rights movement, and that is nothing about us without us. And this is where we stand, and this is a jumping off point. So this is about all of us coming together and standing as one and moving us forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lamondre. I would now like to invite Mansour Ahmed to offer opening remarks.
Hello, moderator and my fellow panelists. Indeed, it is a pleasure for me to join with you today with the help of technology. The subject is very important, that the digital equity and inclusion, how important in the life of persons with disabilities. I myself am a disabled person, totally visually impaired for last 65 years. So I know that disability is a big challenge in the life of a human being. And particularly in the past, it was a big challenge and people were neglected, ignored, left out because of the disability, whether it is blindness, visual impairment, loss of hearing, or physical challenge, or any other form of disability. However, with the help of technology and modern science, things are becoming changed, and people are becoming now more and more exposed, equal, with opportunities, and to face the challenges, to live a life with honor, dignity, and meaningful. Therefore, Today's this panel of discussion is no doubt extremely important in the context of Bangladesh, and I congratulate the Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, our government, ICT division, and the WICST, if I'm not wrong, that they have initiated to host this conference in the right time, while the country is celebrating its 50th independence anniversary.
Thank you, Mansoor Ahmed. Bashkar, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Shane. I hope you are listening me. It's okay?
Yes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bhaskar Bhattacharjee from Bangladesh. I have just born 4 decades ago in a rural village, and I have lost my eyesight as there was no doctor and hospital. And that was a huge struggle I have in my entire life to be here. We didn't really even get a single accessible books during our study, and we never ever even dreamed that persons with disabilities can access technology even a decades ago. So in Bangladesh, the digital Bangladesh is a turning point for many, including people with disabilities. And I am today would like to address few issues where 1 billion people in the globe are facing today because of lack of accessibility, lack of affordability, lack of awareness to ensure digital inclusion for people with disabilities. In my country, it is around 16 million people have some form of disability if we consider the data of WHO. So for them, we need to make all the e-service web and application accessible and barrier-free. As I mentioned, there is few challenges. One, that is accessibility. Accessibility is the biggest challenge for the people with disabilities. National standard. Even the developer, programmer, and policymaker no knowledge on accessibility and standard. Countries didn't really adopt any international standards such as W3C 2.1 or DAISY standard, etc. This is a big challenge for a country like Bangladesh. Another challenge is the affordability. Even though if we have some kind of accessibility, but the people are not able to afford the technology which are now available around us. Most of the technology, smartphone, tabs, computers are highly expensive. And also assistive technologies such as screen reading software, braille display, screen magnifier are very, very costly, which are nearly impossible for a person from Bangladesh to afford by their own. In this regards, Bangladesh governments are trying to provide some of the assistive technology such as laptop, etc. So we need to address these issues immediately to ensure equal participation of all, including people with disabilities. Another very important challenge that is awareness. Normally, people and community are not aware about the rights of persons with disabilities, and especially when we are talking about the digital inclusion. Many organizations, including who are working for the people with disabilities, they are not making their information accessible. They are not making their web and e-service accessible. Even we saw many of the UN agencies also reluctant about the rights of people with disabilities. Many people, policymaker, decision maker have no idea that how people with disabilities can access internet, computer, or any other reading materials through their assistive technology. In the morning, when you read your newspaper by seeing, I just read my newspaper through my smartphone. There is no difference, you and me. Even though I'm blind, you can see. So digital Bangladesh now a reality, and we are trying to make it more inclusive, barrier-free for all. We have adopted a law, is called Persons with Disability Rights and Protection Act 2013, and they have a mandate to ensure all web, e-service, internet accessible for all. Through this, I would like to conclude here to thank the organizer for including me in this discussion. Finally, I would like to little bit correct you. Access to information was my previous organization is changed its name. It's called Aspire to Innovate. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Bashkar. I would now like to invite Leah to offer opening remarks.
Okay, so in the real world, I've seen many accessibility issues I've experienced with technology. So reading comprehension is a struggle. I have, well, not the comprehension itself, but I get overwhelmed when things on the website are not in bullet points or in one humongous paragraph. It makes me less motivated to read it all. So sometimes the wording in like websites, it's not concise enough. It makes it hard to understand. And I'm really hoping there's a better tool that can make users better adjustments for content to be more concise. This would be good, especially for Kindles. And I'm just not the best at reading contents where things are very wordy and content in a long paragraph. When I see things in a long paragraph, it overwhelms me. And so whenever I go on a website, I prefer to read things in bullet points or that are things numbered in shorter paragraphs that makes it easier and less overwhelming. And hopefully I want to learn more about this. And so I know there's Spark Notes for tough novels with figurative language and ruled language. So I think there should be Spark Notes or something like that for those struggling with vocabulary words, or if things are very wordy. We should maybe provide an Amazon Kindle. And I personally, sometimes I get very impatient. So, and so when I ever see error messages, they're not always descriptive, and I find it frustrating. And sometimes the frustrating thing is when I try to troubleshoot, I have to figure out ways and like work harder to investigate. Whenever I try to troubleshoot, it can be hard because not every website has contact information or has a reported problem, which I find frustrating. And whenever my card won't go through something and I know it's right for sure, and I tried calling, but sometimes things can take a while and you have to stay in line just to wait for someone to talk to you if you're trying to troubleshoot. And so it can be frustrating, exactly not knowing what the cause is. And when logging into a website without VPN turned on, for an app, I've experienced that the error message does not specify that VPN to turn on. It just says can't communicate with server, and I didn't know what that means. So I had to ask for help. And so our messages and stuff. And when I'm doing sometimes I'm kicked out of a website, and there's no time warning. So I've experienced things. And as a tester, there's some barriers that can make website even difficult. Like sometimes if it's hard to determine if an element is accessible by keyboard because it does not always receive visible focus, and it can be disoriented, especially to the users who both because I know AT users can be lost, so that makes testing struggling. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, error messages are not sufficiently descriptive, so I'm going to need to do some further investigation. For example, I was unable to submit. When doing testing, I was able to submit a form, and I tested for apostrophes and dashes in name, and this was not specified when on submitting a form. And when I tried to change, when I removed the dashes and apostrophes, it works. So sometimes insufficient error messages means further investigation, tester. And when I tried using the JAWS activate screen reader, you have to like press 3 keyboards at the same time, and I struggled with that. Yeah, and it can take patience to read 100% and 200% text because you can't see everything at once. And so what else? And sometimes I've seen reading rulers on Kindles. I think they're very helpful, but sometimes it could distract. I think it's when I participated in the study, I found it helpful, but I found it a bit distracting of placing it right. So I think we need more inclusive technologies. So barrier can be challenges, but I feel like we're improving. And
Good. Very good. Well, thank you, Leah, for highlighting many practical examples of technology aspects that many of us take for granted that could represent barriers to people with diverse identities. And I do appreciate that. So thank you. And thank you, Lamondre and Mansour Ahmed and Mr. Vashkar for your opening comments as well. We are now going to transition in the panel conversation to a set of moderated questions. These questions are structured to reveal some important insights on the topic of digital inclusion and equity and really dig into some of these topics a bit more. So Lamondre, a question for you. Can you comment on the societal factors that contribute to present involvement or inclusion of persons with disabilities in technology? What is going well and what must be addressed from your perspective?
Great question. First of all, let me start by saying this. Technology has always been the great equalizer for people with disabilities. Technology has always been a source of leveling playing fields so that people with disabilities can be better included in multiple areas of life, whether it be employment, whether it be societal, whether it even be navigating our physical environment. Technology has always been a great equalizer. And I don't think that we have had a greater example that when this global pandemic happened and the world literally was put on pause, all of a sudden issues came to light that had been otherwise squirreled away. For example, there are many organizations who said there is no way that we could do a work at home or a distributed workforce model with our company. But when the pandemic happened, they had to. They had to in order to survive. And all of a sudden, things that were said could not be done, things that they said was impossible to do because of reduction of productivity or because expense or because lack of motivation to do so, all of a sudden, those things became less of a barrier, and now we had to do it. What this did was it opened the doors for people to really begin to talk particularly about digital inclusion. And what's interesting about that, it wasn't just people with disabilities. It was people who lived in remote areas. It was people who had language barriers. It was people who, for whatever reason, could not fit within the specific or the very specific systems that existed before. So we had to find ways around that. And what that did was it opened up the door for dialogue for people with disabilities to really take a part in that. The other thing that happened during this time was the rise of the social justice movement. And we recognized that, no, we all have a part in this. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement. When you saw that, this is one of the first times in my lifetime that I actually saw people who were not directly affected by the issues that Black people were facing speaking up about it, talking about it, becoming allies. So one of the things that we've seen is that through technology, this movement was able to spread throughout the world, although it found its genesis in the United States. We saw protest. We saw advocacy. We saw movement throughout the world as a result of technology. We saw people who normally would not have a voice having that voice. But I will also tell you this. As we look at the widespread adoption of technology and uses of technology, there's some challenges that we face. First of all, this is an incredible time to be alive, and the advances that we're making is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. However, remember I told you that there were 1.3 billion people on this planet with disabilities. Even though these advancements are incredible and people are really taking advantage and using them, we are still leaving a huge portion of the population out of being a part of that. And if you're leaving them out, then you're leaving a part of what real change is. You're leaving out perspectives that can offer real life solutions to the issues that we face. In other words, we are beginning to realize that we're really all in this together. Another challenge that I think we face, because I'm much more talking about the perspective and the culture surrounding technology than I am the nuts and bolts of it, and this is essential, is that we have to realize that we're all a part of this, that we're all in this together. And if you don't have a seat at the table from the beginning, not tacking accessibility on as an add-in, but it being a part of the DNA of your design and what you're building, then you're really missing the mark. You're really missing the mark of moving our human existence forward. And so for those reasons, I believe that it's essential to embrace new technologies and be excited about moving forward, but do so with the inclusion of everyone. Because in this time and where we live, we can't afford to leave people out. And if you're leaving people with disabilities out, you're leaving 1.3 billion people out. And that will lead to sure failure. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Lamondre. Thank you very much. Mansoor Ahmed, question is now for you. How can philanthropy support the work of NGOs to advance digital equity? And how can foundations encourage the private sector and governments to act?
Thank you, Shane. Well, the question is extremely important. The disability is so a challenging issue where the government sector, particularly the philanthropic support from private foundation and non-profit organization around the world play a vital role. If I look at the history of our part of the world, where the education for the visually impaired and for the education of the hearing impaired or intellectually disabled started in the 50s and 60s, always by the private initiative. Subsequently, this kind of activities were taken over by the government, or government has come forward with partial financial support. Therefore, a country like Bangladesh, most densely populated, when I speak not only for Bangladesh, but the entire South Asia, which constitute 1/5 of the humanity, where no less than 10 to 15% people are suffering from some form of disability, where government alone cannot pay all these, provided all these equipment and devices. There is extreme urgent need for corporate house, for foundation, for organizations to come forward to support our activities. Even today in Bangladesh, for example, for the visually impaired people, the textbooks which are produced by the National Curriculum Textbook Board, these are produced by private organizations and at a very high cost. Similarly, even at the end of every year when we print our Braille calendar, there is a cost involvement. So what I am trying to find out here, that corporate house or foundation or similar kind of non-profit organization should be more and more active and more supportive in helping us. There is a saying, CSR, corporate social responsibility. We quite often see this more visible with sports, with star, with music, but hardly we see them in the field of disability and around. I personally, with my experience of last more than 6 decades, strongly recommend that there is need for support by the foundation, by the corporate house, by other organizations, along with the government in this field, so that more and more people with disabilities can be supportive and independent by applying and using the appliances and devices for disability to meet this digital issue.
Thank you, Mansur Ahmed. Now, Vashkar, I'd like to pose a question to you. What advances and challenges have you seen in the Global South regarding digital equity and inclusion? And how do you believe this compares to global trends?
Thank you very much, Shane. One of the most important tools we have, I can say, is the tools that is UN Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability, which was ratified by many countries in Global South. And as you know, Article 9, it was discussed about the accessibility of digital technology, information communication technology, and also there is Article 21 about the right to informations, and digital inclusion issues are highly addressed in the convention. Based on that, many countries already adopt laws and policies for ensuring accessibility. Also, we saw that because of the advancement of technology, we have some international standards such as web accessibility standard, etc. And also there is number of international organizations who are advocating for the digital inclusion, including G3 ICT. And last 1.5 years, another technological boost up has happened because of the COVID, and we are highly dependent on the technology. So people are now used to use the technology, including a smartphone, etc. This is also, even though COVID pandemic was a terrible time for us, but for technological innovations, accessibility, we find there is a positive move. I can tell you, like in Bangladesh, we have developed a online meeting platform like Zoom. It's called Boitalk. Accessibility is now part of any digitalization, and people are government are considering in our region. If we see in India, they have a Accessible India campaign, and Nepal, Sri Lanka also they have progress. And if we see in a other part of the world, yes, I think technological advancement are really helpful. And most importantly, artificial intelligence, as you know, now people who are unable to read or unable to write, they can take the help of artificial intelligence, such as Google Assistants, etc., are very, very helpful. Another very important move has made, that is open source technology, such as there is a free screen reading software for different languages in Global South, including Bangla. We have NVDA, so we don't need to buy any sophisticated software, which we even not able to afford, but there is a solution. And all, like even in Android also, we have number of progress, like we have text to speech, even though there was no high quality text to speech for PC, but I can say our Android based text to speech are good. People are making accessible books are now a reality in different country. There is Accessible Book Consortium, DAISY Consortium, but working together to make the books accessible. And world biggest accessibility library is called Bookshare. They are working in the Global South to make the books and technology available. We have Marrakesh Treaty, which many countries already ratified. Bangladesh also in a final stage to ratify the Marrakesh Treaty. So there is many progress, even though we have lots of challenge, but progress are not that less. We are really progressing. That's why today we are here. A number of persons with disabilities, we gather together, we are discussing together. This is also an advancement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vashkar. Leah, final question is for you in the moderated session. So Leah, the final question is for you. Can you please share with us some other examples of barriers that you've experienced?
Closing captions and videos. For example, when I'm like watching a YouTube video, it's hard to understand a person speaking with an accent. And whenever I try to turn captions on, it can cover the entire screen, or captions do not always sync with what people are saying. It can be a problem on Zoom because sometimes the sound does not go through properly, or I know people talk in a heavy accent. So that's a problem with like barriers between like, and
yes. So it sounds like a larger issue in technology when it comes to diversity, not only in terms of disability, but also in cultural context, in language, in how people speak. There are lots of different. Yeah, so there are a lot of different dimensions of when we talk about digital inclusion and equity. It goes beyond just disability. It goes beyond just race, gender, individual ways that people identify. It's about the intersection of those things as well.
Got it.
Yeah, great. All right, thank you, Leah. So this is the final section the final section of our session. So I'd like to conclude by asking each panelist to provide a practical, actionable challenge to the ICT sector that could serve to advance digital inclusion and equity of persons with disabilities. So Lamondre, could you please go first?
Absolutely. As you've heard from the panelists, there are a diversity of issues that are faced, whether it be in the testing process, whether it be through employment, whether it be through just the general attitudes towards disability. And truthfully, with all of the barriers that we talk about, attitudinal barriers are the biggest ones that people with disabilities face. And I think you've also learned from the panelists that it comes in a number of different ways. It manifests itself in digital. It manifests itself in the physical world. But for the most part, it begins with the attitude about people with disabilities and about accessibilities. So the first thing that I really think that we have to do is realize that it requires all of us to solve the issues. It requires all of us to make progress in accessibility. The second thing is to recognize, first of all, that the only good design is accessible design. Let me say that again. The only good design is accessible design. And then the very next thing is the recognition that it's not just about compliance, but it's really about creating technologies and systems and integration that all of us can participate in this world. All of us can participate in employment. All of us can participate in being integral parts of our community. And here's the thing. It's on you. It's on you. You have to take the initiative. You have to take the perspective of what can I do to move this forward. So one of the first things that you can do right now is go and look at the areas in which your design process or whatever processes you use to do your work. Think about accessibility and think, how can I do this better? And I don't care how good a design is. I don't care how slick it is. I don't care how important it is. If it does not address the needs of the people that it's designed to impact, it's not good. And we must start with accessibility in mind and not as a siloed separate thing. Because remember, I said there are 1.3 billion people on this planet with some form of disability. That means that 1 in 6 persons could potentially be impacted by a lack of accessibility. And you can change that. As I said, it's on you. It's on us. So thank you for doing what you do. And I believe that shift in the way that we think in elevation will certainly help us to move forward.
Thank you, Lamondre. I would now like to invite Mansour Ahmed to provide your thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Shen. Actually, this is a very, very important issue for which we should discuss. You see, 13 years ago, in 2008, with a lot of excitement and enthusiasm, whole world was looking at New York when we got elected the first UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And we also, by that, adopted the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. No doubt, this is a bill of Magna Carta for persons with disabilities. We were more and more optimistic that things will become fast change in the life of persons with disabilities. Policymakers, industrial leaders, managers, academia, researchers, all must play a very important role. Meanwhile, the MDG is over and SDG is on. And with the target, the SDG will be over by the next 2030. These are the nice terminology. Globally, we accept them and we look at those with a very high hope. But the real question is how far it has a real meaningful change in the life of poor people. We all should remember the large number of persons with disabilities, they live in the developing world. 80% of the total disabled people, they live in the developing world in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, where economy is very poor. Priorities are not given on disability issue. Therefore, the policymakers, the government leadership, and finally the industrial leaders, the scientists. Even last week we are talking about this Glasgow big conference, which is a big challenge for us about the disaster. This has direct effect on the life of persons with disabilities. Therefore, my strong appeal as a citizen of Bangladesh and as a citizen of the world with disability, that disability must receive top attention from all quarters, including the government, the intergovernmental bodies, the United Nations system, the World Bank, and the private sector, without which a large number of people will always be left out. Final, my call is always be remembered that in spite of modern medical science, all people will never become cured. There'll be some people who will suffer from some form of disability. Therefore, we should keep a space and provision for those who need our care and support, without which this world is never equal to all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mansour Ahmed. Bashkar, the floor is now yours to offer a practical, actionable challenge to the ICT sector.
The most important is the mindset. Still, the mindsets of the peoples are not positive towards digital inclusion. I became very surprised when I saw the disability organization, INGO, UN agencies are reluctant to make their informations and service accessible for people with disabilities, even though they are mandated. We saw that the people are really reluctant to make the service inclusive for people with disabilities, especially digital inclusion issues. So we need to change the mindset. You know, we have enough law, policies, convention, standard, everything is there, but implementation is very low. That's why we are not getting fully inclusive digital world. This is very, very important. So we need to think how we'll practice the digital inclusion issues in different country, how UN can coordinate within their country of wish within the government to promote the UN Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We forgot to mention about the SDG. You know, SDG is one of the first international commitment, the mainstreaming commitment, where disability has significant portion. We saw almost 5 goals and 11 indicators on disability, where we saw leave no one behind is one of the most important motto of SDG. So if we exclude the people with disability, how we can achieve SDG? Lastly, I can tell you the country need to be more committed. UN need to be more committed. The developer, programmer, corporates, private sector need to be very committed. The disability movement need to be more vibrant on the issues of digital inclusion. Even though we talked about employment, education, accessibility, many things, but sometimes we forgot about the information accessibility, about the web accessibility, about the accessibility of e-service, about the accessibility of communications. Sign language is also a missing agenda in our discussions. And language also a barrier. You know, there is many communities who don't have any language. The language minority also have some people with disabilities. How we'll address them? So this is very important for us. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening us. But we are progressing as a digital Bangladesh. We think by December, we can announce some of our platform will become fully accessible for people with disabilities. Even though we have a big challenge that as there is lots of informations which are converted into JPG, into PDF, which really a technological challenge. I believe within this challenge, Bangladesh will become a inclusive digital Bangladesh. Thank you.
So thank you, Vashkar. All right, Leah, the final opportunity to pose a challenge goes to you. And it's actually something that you and I have had the opportunity to work on together in some other work in our career. And I'd like to just kind of throw out this idea to you and see what you think. I believe very strongly that the technology world could benefit greatly by directly hiring persons with disabilities to be the testers for all things accessibility, usability, inclusive design. Rather than simulating the experience of persons with disabilities, employ them in those positions to do this work. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because a good example is forms being sufficiently descriptive. Like, I never know if a person can understand error messages or things very well. So it can be sometimes harder to see if an accessibility test passes because you never know what a person's struggling with. But having a disability and experiencing error messages that are not sufficiently descriptive, it can be easy to identify. So, and sometimes we all struggle with things. So it's not only people with disabilities, but sometimes forms missing labels. I think it's important regardless of disabilities. So, and I can easily identify color contrast things. I probably think it can be distracting or that there's insufficient color contrast makes it harder to read.
Great. Well, I certainly have benefited from the work that you have done, Leah, as a quality assurance professional when it comes to technology. And I've seen just tremendous value from the work that you've done and your colleagues have done in your role, having that lived experience and giving that insight into technology. So I'd like to thank all of you on the panel for offering these challenges to the ICT world, something to consider. This concludes our panel discussion. I'd like to again congratulate our hosts and organizing parties for this tremendous event and for inviting this panel to take part. We and our colleagues across the disability community look forward to increased engagement from the ICT sector on matters of digital inclusion and equity and the attainment of goals set forth in the UN CRPD and the SDGs. There is an urgent and compelling need for action, especially in the wake of the global pandemic. A fully inclusive recovery requires active collaboration between the disability community and the ICT sector. And as Lamondre said, it's on us, all of us collectively, to come together. So thank you all so much for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Nabila, that should be the